Please welcome President of Stony Brook University, Andrea Goldsmith.
Get right on with her. Get right to the chair.
Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm so thrilled and truly honored to have this group of outstanding leaders who've joined us to participate in my inauguration panel focused on women in leadership. Thank you so much for being here. These women are incredibly accomplished and pioneers that I deeply respect. I know the audience, particularly our students, will find this panel to be invigorating and motivating, and it's so meaningful to me that you would honor me and Stony Brook to be here taking part in this special panel. So as we start this discussion, I'm going to ask each of you to share a few opening remarks about your unique and compelling leadership journeys. I'm looking forward to hearing about your experiences as well as navigating leadership in times of change and disruption, which we certainly are in interesting times now. I know that our attendees spanning all facets of our special university that are here today, our students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community partners, will take away pieces of wisdom from each of you and feel deeply motivated by hearing your perspectives, the challenges and opportunities that you've faced. I look forward to highlighting your professional journeys so that our audience can hear that there's so many different paths to a successful career and a successful life. And I also look forward to hearing how each of you stepped into leadership. We're not born as leaders, so I look forward to you sharing with them how you became a leader and how you evolved as a leader in your different leadership roles, and in particular, how you approach leadership in challenging times. So I have the distinct honor and pleasure to introduce these exceptional leaders. Of course, if I were to read their long and incredibly prestigious bios, we would have no time for the panel, so I'm not going to do that. Their detailed bios are on the event website. But I will take a moment to share a few words about their achievements and my connection to each one of them. So I'm going to start with Marilyn Simons, who is a two-time Stony Brook alumna. Yay! Alumna, the #1 public university in New York. And Marilyn is also an advocate, a deep advocate, in the not-for-profit scientific community. She's a co-founder and chair of the Simons Foundation, whose mission is to advance the frontiers of research in math and science. And in 2014, she founded the Stony Brook Women's Leadership Council, which is a mentoring program for outstanding undergraduate women, where she currently serves as the council's chair. I had the great honor to participate in some of the council's meetings and meet some of the mentors and mentees, and it's incredibly inspiring, the work that goes on in the Leadership Council and the impact that they have on the participants, both the mentors and the mentees. Marilyn was on the presidential search committee that selected me as Stony Brook president. So I'm infinitely grateful for that. I think she made a good choice. I hope so. The wisdom and vision that she brings to our foundation board as a board member and so many other Stony Brook activities, the incredibly transformative generosity that she and Jim have provided to Stony Brook, and the role model that Marilyn embodies for me and so many others make it truly an honor and pleasure to be Marilyn's president, colleague, and friend. Let's welcome Marilyn.
Thank you.
Next, I have the pleasure to introduce Barbara G. Novick, who co-founded BlackRock, now one of the world's largest asset managers, in 1988. Wow. She transitioned from vice chairman to senior advisor in February 2021. And previously, she headed the global client group and oversaw global business development for institutional and individual investors and their intermediaries worldwide. In 2009, she established the Global Public Policy Group that provided a voice for investors in policy. I have the great pleasure of serving with Barbara on the board of directors for Intel. We've had quite a wild ride the last year. And I have to say that working with Barbara has been an inspiration. I've learned so much from her wisdom, her perspective, and the deep leadership experience she brings from starting BlackRock as 8 people with a great idea and taking it to such an incredible company. That vision, wisdom, leadership experience that she brings to the Intel board has been an honor to learn from her and to be her friend as well. So let's welcome Barbara. Next, sorry. My cards are sticking together. Here we go. Okay, next I have Maria Klawe, who joined Math for America as president in 2023 after a 17-year term as Harvey Mudd College's 5th president. Previously, she served as Dean of Engineering at Princeton, the first woman to hold that role, as well as a professor in their Department of Computer Science. Maria's leadership at Princeton launched a bold vision for its engineering school, whose significant impact 2 decades later was apparent when I became its engineering dean, its 3rd woman engineering dean. And of course, Maria was one of the first phone calls I made. How am I going to lead Princeton engineering? And she was incredibly valuable as a mentor to me in those early days of my deanship. And I read her strategic plan from 2002, which had a big impact on my own strategic plan for Princeton. Klawe joined Princeton from the University of British Columbia, where she served various roles, and I've known Maria for decades as a role model and an inspiration for women engineers and women leaders, as well as a powerful voice advocating for increasing diversity in the engineering profession. Telly Whitney was on the panel of women engineers earlier, and I know that she worked very closely with Maria in founding the Anita Board organization and taking it to have such incredible impact on women engineers. So let's welcome Maria Klawe. Thank you so much. And Anne-Marie Slaughter is the CEO of New America, a nonprofit think and action tank, not just a think tank, but an action tank, and a globally recognized scholar, policy innovator, and public leader. She served as the first woman director of policy planning at the U.S. State Department and was dean of Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, as well as a professor at Harvard Law School. So I knew of Anne-Marie long before I moved to Princeton from her work on foreign policy, gender, equity, and caregiving, and democratic reform. I was so honored that the first time I met Anne-Marie was shortly after I joined Princeton. It was the middle of COVID. Nobody was meeting, but we went for a walk. She was gracious enough to say, let's go for a walk. And what was striking to me in that walk, which I still remember around the Princeton campus, that was pretty dead at the time, was the immense intellectual breadth and impact that she has had from her articles and books, but more importantly maybe, her warmth, compassion, and humility. So let's welcome Anne-Marie. Now, Karen Persikill-Keogh was hoping to participate in today's discussion, though she will regretfully be unable to because of the ongoing budget negotiations in Albany for the state budget that we're supposed to wrap up on April Fool's Day, April 1st, so they're still ongoing. But she sends her best wishes to all of us for this discussion, and she has sent me some remarks to read. Karen is a Stony Brook alumna as well. She serves as secretary to Governor Kathy Hochul, the highest ranking appointed position in state government, and she has over 2 decades of operational and managerial experience that she brings to the Hochul administration. For 7 years, she served on then Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton's senior staff as New York State's director and campaign manager for Clinton's successful 2006 Senate re-election. So I have a beautiful note from Karen Keogh, which I will read at the end as part of the closing remarks, but she is sorry that she couldn't be with us today. I guess the budget does trump coming to Stony Brook because we also need a state budget at Stony Brook and in New York State. So I'd then like to kick off the discussion by talking about the expansive and rewarding career paths of each of you, which I know has been very different and has gone to different destinations. So I'm going to start by asking each of you to tell us about your journeys to become powerful and inspirational leaders And did you envision your careers unfolding in the way that they did? And anybody can start.
Okay, I'll jump in first. So, certainly the way my life has turned out, I had no inkling of where I would find myself today. Growing up, I grew up on Long Island in a middle-class home. Everyone in my family was a bricklayer, and I was the first girl in my family to go to college. A couple of my uncles had, but pretty much all the men were bricklayers or in the brick business, and I assumed I would get married one day and have a family, and that I needed to get a job after I graduated and to be able to take care of myself until I was more settled down. So I went off to college, not originally Stony Brook. I went off to college and I found economics there, but my first year was very disrupted. I was in Washington, D.C. in 1969, and it was a really difficult time to be in college. And after a year in college, I wondered about going to work for the military-industrial state, as we called it back then. And took a year off to work, living in Washington, and then I just decided I was going to come home. I grew up in Bayshore, and see if I could go to Stony Brook. And instantly at Stony Brook, I loved it instantly. I commuted with my brother and cousin who went off to lay brick, and I went to my calculus class, and I just was totally happy at Stony Brook. And I didn't know what I would do in my life. I only knew I loved economics, and I just wanted to learn everything I could about how the economy worked. And I loved math, and I wanted to be able to use math and computer science in my economics. And somehow that was a path that I think, just thanks to people who gave me a helping hand or advice or a suggestion. Somebody suggested that I go in the PhD program. So I think I was pretty undirected, but I was a hard worker, and I loved learning. And I got opportunities, and I said yes. So pretty much that's how my life unfolded. I wouldn't recommend it as a career path.
Although there's a lot of that similar theme from the earlier panel of the women engineers. So sometimes maybe that is the way to go, is seize opportunities as they arise. Barbara, do you want to go?
So it's interesting because I also grew up on Long Island, not in the same town, very much middle class. And we had a retail business. My dad ran a store. And all of us, there were 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. We all did everything, worked in the stock room, worked on the sewing floor, ran the cash register, worked in the office. And he just treated us all the same. It never occurred to me that there was sort of this difference career-wise of boys versus girls. I chose to go to Cornell. It was egalitarian before people thought about being egalitarian. And I didn't want to be in those pioneering classes of the ones who had just gone co-ed. And there also, it never occurred to me that there was a big differential. It wasn't until I graduated and I went into school thinking I wanted to be a teacher. I came out of school thinking I was more interested in economics and finance and business. But back then, now this could be hard for any of you to imagine, We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have laptops. We didn't have tablets. We didn't have any of that stuff. But I kind of had this inkling that computers were going to be important. So I took a job where I was going to be in this computer boot camp at Morgan Stanley. I started my career as a programmer. I was really good at it. It was very mathematical. And then I decided I really hated it. So, so being good at it doesn't mean you have to like it, right? So I looked for an opportunity to switch using what I had learned as a foundation and moving to a more of a client-facing kind of role, much more of a people person. And then a bunch of us decided to leave and start BlackRock. And I ran the client side, so business development and client service. And we had nothing, so it wasn't like I had to manage a lot of people, but it grew very nicely. And a lot of it was really about listening to the customers, understanding, or they weren't customers yet, understanding what their needs were, what they were thinking about, and then developing products that really met those criteria. And at about the 20-year mark, we had grown quite a bit, and my parents were sick, and I had 3 teenage kids, and I decided that was enough. So I stepped down. Larry Fink, our CEO, convinced me to stay on part-time to do what? We don't know. But it was the great financial crisis that year. So to do what was to go to Washington and figure out what things they might change, just a few things here and there. And so I ended up getting roped back in. My parents unfortunately passed away. And I was roped back in to start up a public policy group. And I learned about Washington. I didn't know much about Washington, but I went and learned, and again, used the same approach, very much listening, trying to understand what was on their mind, being very solutions-oriented, and set up, I think, a world-class, we had the best client service scores in the industry ever, and we had probably the best public policy results ever. It's all just about listening and taking cue from them.
Wow. So I was the second of 4 daughters in our family, and my father was convinced that I was a boy, and I was convinced that I was a boy too. And Marilyn and I are exactly the same age, except that she has her birthday in January and mine is in July. And at least in Canada, which is where I was growing up, girls were not supposed to be good at math. They definitely weren't supposed to play the trumpet. They weren't even supposed to be good at art. And I was good at all of those things. And I benefited because my father was absolutely convinced that I could do anything. And so when I started in honors math at the University of Alberta, the math profs, and I was doing really, really well. Like, they put me in graduate courses in my second year as an undergraduate, but they asked me why I wanted to be a mathematician, because there are no great women mathematicians. And they said, you're so good at so many different things. Why would you choose math when there are no great women mathematicians? Well, I'm very stubborn. So, of course, I stayed in math. And I'll just say, because we went to college at the same time, there were lots of protests, and I actually dropped out in the middle of my 3rd year because I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I couldn't figure out how I could do that as a mathematician. I mean, of course I could prove theorems, but I didn't see how that would change the world. Well, I missed math so much, I was out for 21 months. I went to India and back. Got married while I was in India, just, because there was an upcoming war with Pakistan, and my parents were really embarrassed. They were in India at the time with United Nations, and they were very embarrassed to have an unmarried daughter traveling with a male boyfriend. And so just to calm the waters, we got married. New Year's Eve. It did calm the waters. That was really good, and the war with Pakistan never happened. And my parents were very happy, even though they had told me not to get married for their sake. So anyway, I came back to the University of Alberta. I had written to them saying I wanted to come back and go straight into graduate school. They said, yes, you can do that, but you have to finish your undergraduate degree first, but you can take only graduate courses. So I showed up coming back. Now, I had been gone for 21 months, no math, lots and lots of psychedelics. And needless to say, I did not remember anything about mathematics. It was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because before that, math had been like drinking milkshakes. It was the easiest thing in the world. And now all of a sudden, because I was in all these graduate courses and I didn't know the meaning of any of the definitions, I had to work. And I worked all day, every single day. I got straight A's and started my PhD the next year. But it completely changed my attitude towards working. And the thing about working hard to achieve something is it makes it of value to you. So I'll just say that when I finished my PhD, unsurprisingly, the marriage did not last.
All the psychedelics.
Or whatever. When I finished my PhD, there were 1,000 people looking for jobs. There were 20 tenure-track math faculty positions in the United States and Canada. I got one. My advisor was very happy because he was very young and felt he didn't have the clout to get me a job. I took it. I went. I hated it. It was in Oakland University, which is north of Detroit, about 25 miles north. And, I'd always loved teaching. I was teaching advanced mathematics to people who couldn't add fractions. It's not fun. And just by chance, I found out that if I happened to be a computer scientist working in the same area of mathematics, but with a computer science background, I could get a job at Stanford or MIT or Bell Labs. And so I went back to do a second PhD in computer science at the University of Toronto. 1 year after I finished my PhD, I had never taken a course. I'd never written a line of code. I took 5 graduate courses per semester. What I had done when I came back from dropping out was very good preparation. I just worked 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to midnight every single day for the entire time I was there. They hired me as a tenure-track assistant professor after 9 months. And that's how I met my now husband of 45 years, Nick Pippinger. They thought I was going to be very successful and famous, so they put me in charge of a seminar series so I'd meet famous computer scientists. Nick was the second speaker in the series. The first one was John Backus, who founded Fortran and Algol 68, one of the big programming languages guys. Nick and I were engaged within 4 weeks. Wow. Because Nick was so shy, and I knew we wanted to have kids and all that kind of stuff, Toronto made him an offer. MIT wanted to hire both of us. I mean, this just shows you go from math, job at Oakland University, 9 months of computer science. We're in one of the top computer science departments in the world. You fall in love with this other theoretical computer scientist. MIT opens its doors. In any case, I went to IBM Research, which was where Nick worked. That was one of the best choices of my life because they were very interested in putting women and people of color into leadership positions. I was made a manager after 4 years, a senior manager a year later. I was the management trained. It made a huge difference in my life. We went back to Canada to the University of British Columbia when our kids were 3 and 6 because I wanted them to learn French in French immersion. I went to Princeton after 15 years in Canada because I was working really hard on changing, attracting more women into computer science and other areas of science and engineering. And the US doesn't pay any attention to Canada whatsoever, except when it wants it as the 51st state. So I went there because I wanted to continue to work on opening doors to people underrepresented in STEM, and I wanted I wanted the world to pay attention. So that's how I ended up at Princeton. I'll stop there.
Maria and I were
Princeton at the same time. We were new deans, both working for President Shirley Tillman, who was the first woman president. I should have learned then never to follow Maria. I'm afraid it will be a less colorful story. But so I just want to start, first of all, by saying how great it is to be here and to see all of you, including all the wonderful men in the audience who we're really talking about leadership and our particular journeys, but it is, I do not believe there's such a thing as how women lead and how men lead. I think there's how humans lead, and actually we all have a lot to learn from one another, not just as women and men, but just as fellow leaders. And I'm thrilled to be here to honor and support Andrea's tremendous leadership. So I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, in the 1960s. I was born in 1958, so 1960s and 1970s. And from my mother's Belgian, so one of the things that has shaped me all my life, I've spent a career in foreign policy, was going from this world in Virginia, sort of upper middle class suburban Virginia, peanut butter, jelly sandwiches, all that good stuff, to Belgium, which was very different, spoke French. It was in a city, ate at lunch in the middle of the day, which was really dinner. It was just a radically different culture clash, and that has really shaped me. Growing up in Virginia, when I did, women were not expected to do much of anything, and I only knew one woman lawyer growing up. There were no women professors, engineers, politicians, doctors, any of that. My father wanted me to have a career. He was a lawyer, and he encouraged me to have a career from as long as I can remember. I only found out much later why, because that was an era in which a lot of social upheaval and political upheaval, and a divorce exploded. And he was seeing a lot of women who had married men. They had not gone to graduate school to put their husbands through law school or med school or something else. And their husbands were now, the marriage was breaking up, and they had no way of supporting themselves. And so he decided, really remarkably, when I now look back on it, his daughter was never going to be in that position. I was the oldest, I have two brothers, but his daughter was going to be able to support herself. He thinks I went kind of overboard on that mission, but I realized looking back how unusual that was. And I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to do foreign policy. I was unbelievably directed. I showed up at Princeton in 1976 and had it all mapped out. I was going to go to law school, I was going to go to a big New York law firm. I was going to be sort of work for a partner who was going to go in and out of the State Department. This was the path to how you did foreign policy. And I figured I'd do all of that. And I did a lot of it. I studied foreign policy. I went to law school. I worked for a big New York firm where the former Secretary of State Cy Vance had worked. I was all set. I got an offer, ready to go, and I hated the summer working for that law firm. I was one of 50 associates. I realized I can't do this. And so I then spent about 4 years not sure what I was going to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. I re-enrolled in I'd gotten a master's at Oxford, but after graduation, I re-enrolled in a PhD program with no intention of teaching. I just had to have something to do, and I had to be able to get fellowships. So after 4 years, one of my law professors said, have you thought about teaching law? And I said, no, and my grades, frankly, did not qualify me to teach law. But I got lucky. I was getting a PhD. At that point, it was sort of law and economics, law, in my case, law and international relations. I went on the teaching market, got a job at Chicago, moved on from then, and absolutely loved it. Taught law for 12 years, was then interviewed to go back to Princeton as dean of what was then the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. And Shirley Tillman was the first woman president and a Canadian, and somebody who had not gone to Princeton either. She was a very unusual figure, and it was a very exciting time, and I loved being a professor. I really did. Went into government, then decided that I wanted to do something more active than teaching, although I still love the world of ideas. So in that lesson, it's more
knowing or refusing to do something I didn't want to do was more important than knowing what I thought I did. And I would give you that as a lesson. The other thing I'll just say, and I've been reflecting on this, in high school I was the co-head of student government, I was the editor of the newspaper, I was the head of the literary magazine. I mean, I was a leader. But I never thought of myself, once I got to college and after, I never thought of myself I never thought I was a leader until my late 30s, when I was talking to my husband about finding a new president for the American Society of International Law, and I was a tenured professor of international law at Harvard. I was not chopped liver. And I was telling my husband this, and he said, well, why don't you do it? And I said, oh no, I couldn't do it. He's like, what do you mean you couldn't do it? Of course you could do it. A lot of women leaders have stories like this, where it's somebody else who says, of course you can do it. And I now look back, if you woke me up in the middle of the night and asked what I do, I would say leader pretty early on. I hope I'd say mom and wife and other good things, but I would say leader. But it wasn't something that was ingrained in my culture growing up. And I think leaders are made as much as they are born. Or at least they are encouraged as much as they are born. And I'm deeply grateful to the mentors, to my husband, to mentors, to others who saw leadership where I didn't necessarily see that in myself.
It's interesting because when I think about my own leadership, like you, I didn't think of it as leadership at the time. It was just you see something that needs to get done.
And you do it.
And you do it because it's important and you care about it. And that is part of getting leadership experience, is volunteering or getting elected.
Exactly.
I was elected to the Stanford Senate, and didn't expect to be. And so I think that we don't think of it as leadership, but jumping in and doing something that needs to get done is leadership, and is in many ways a better training than formal leadership roles, because then you're often leading by influence. You're not tapped to be a leader. You don't have a formal leadership title. You're leading by example. You're leading by vision. You're leading by a desire to make a positive impact, and I know all of you have done that. I want to turn to the fact that you are in such different sectors. If I look at the leadership sitting across from me here, your leadership spans academia, industry, government, and nonprofits, and often multiple of those sectors at different times. So what drew you to the different sectors? Why did you go into the sectors that you did and then go to another sector? What drew you to the sector and then to another sector throughout your long journeys?
That's a great question.
Well, I guess I'll jump in. So I graduated in December 1981. And there wasn't exactly a strong hiring market at the time. In fact, I could wallpaper my entire apartment with the rejection letters. And there was one company that called me back and made me an offer, and that was Morgan Stanley. So they had this computer boot camp, and I said, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do. As I mentioned,
Your mic.
I discovered, I don't know what's wrong with my mic. Okay, I discovered that I didn't really like the computers that much, certainly not programming in APL, a very old language. And so I started looking around and said, well, what else can I do? So I was able to switch from Morgan Stanley to First Boston in this client-facing role. And it was satisfying in some ways, but I didn't really love being in a brokerage firm where you really were always on the other side of the customer. There's always a negotiation. And when we had this opportunity to start an investment management firm, I jumped at the opportunity. And I found that we were always, as a fiduciary, we were always on the same side as our client. And that was much more satisfying. When I stepped down, I thought I was going to retire very young, but as things turned out, I had a passion for our business. And with the great financial crisis, I saw a need for the public policy. They needed to have a voice of investors. They needed to have somebody who was going to understand the markets, understand the clients, and make sure that the new rules that got introduced weren't all about how to make the banks better, but how to really understand the clients, the pensions, the endowments, all these different clients. So that was how I jumped back in and was really quite passionate about it.
So I had always thought I would be, a university professor. It was, when I had finished my first year of university, I went to the chair of the math department and said, I want to teach the honors calculus first year course. I was 17 years old. And he looked at me and he said, I can totally and I just told him, I absolutely love the course. I love teaching. I would be great at teaching this course. And he looked at me and he said, it's also one of the really favorite courses for our faculty to teach. So I really couldn't let you teach it, but you could be the TA. and I mean, yeah, that was definitely me. I'll also say that as part of a protest in my first year at university, we occupied the president's office. We were part of Students as a Democratic Society. The president was a mathematician, and our request was that he put students on university-wide committees. And he just said yes, and we left his office. It was went really well. But in any case, I was pretty sure I was going to be a university professor, probably in Canada, since I was Canadian. And that got sort of derailed when I ended up at Oakland University, since I realized I didn't want to be a professor if I couldn't teach strong students. And but then I ended up going to industry because I married Nick. And Nick is one of the shyest people I have ever met in my life. I did eventually meet someone shyer than Nick, but that was only about several years later. And I just didn't see how he could go to a university, because you really do have to interact with people. There's just no option. And so, but going to IBM Research was one of the best things I ever did. I just got so much training. And I was really, it's sort of like Marilyn and the military industrial complex. I didn't want to go work for a big company. I mean, I hated big companies. I was a radical, but I went to IBM Research. Well, it taught me. And I have stayed in universities for the rest of my career until basically 2.5 years ago, when I went to Math for America as president, which is a nonprofit and funded very generously by the Simons Foundation, which is sort of how I know Marilyn. Though, in fact, I knew Marilyn from when I was at Princeton. I think I feel very lucky to have ended up at Math for America, because one of the things that's going to change our world, is changing our world very dramatically, is AI. And it's going to have a big impact in post-secondary education and in K-12 education. And one of the things I feel incredibly grateful about being at Math for America is we have 1,000 math and science teachers, public school teachers in New York City that we support. And I truly believe that if we're going to figure out how to safely and effectively use generative AI in K-12 learning, it has to be led by teachers. And that a community like Math for America, a community of 1,000 teachers who are great teachers who love to learn, they are going to be a fantastic resource to be able to lead that. So, the way I sort of think about changing from one sector to another is there are times when, either for your personal life or because of what's happening in the world around you, that it's time to make a change. And so I just feel very lucky that I've had the opportunities to work for an amazing company. I mean, I cannot believe how stupid I was about IBM. They really were a fantastic company, and I got fantastic training. Then to be in academia, and now to be at a really amazing nonprofit.
So you've already heard one of the ways in which I moved from thinking I was going to be a lawyer and hating the work and becoming a professor. And I have to say, when I graduated from college, I would have told you the one thing I would never do was be in academia. My grandfather was at the
University of Virginia. He was a football coach and the head of golf, and a golf coach and the head of intramurals, and I got none of his genes. So, but being a university professor was never part of my plan, but I loved it. But I got there by saying what I didn't want to do. After that, I had always wanted to go into the State Department, so that part was something I wanted to do. Becoming a dean of a public policy school, nothing. There was an opportunity. And then leaving academia and taking over a think tank was an insane thing to do from an economic security point of view. But what I've realized is, and I only realized this through having my children, both of whom are ADHD, and my youngest in particular, I'm really ADHD. I need constantly to be learning and growing. And when I get bored, and I spent 12 years as a law professor and 7 years as a dean and 2 years, and I want to do things that mean I'm constantly growing and learning. And that, I think, is one thing. It keeps you young, it keeps life interesting. And I think you don't always have the chance to sort of say, I want to do this, and it happens, but you do always have the chance to challenge yourself. And one of the things I tell my mentees is you need to get out of your comfort zone. And you're taking another job, if your stomach doesn't hurt, you're not far enough out. When I left being dean and moved to taking over being director of policy planning at the State Department, the US State Department's an enormous, it's a huge city block of a building. I had never been out of academia at that point. I was terrified. I wanted to go home and, curl up in fetal position. That's getting out of your comfort zone. And the other thing I will add, and you might be surprised, I was terrified of public speaking. And even when I became a professor, I had to go, the night before I taught my first class, I went to the empty room, a room like this one, and spoke to an empty room because I was afraid my voice wouldn't come out the next day. I have no problem today, so again, you just make yourself do it and you grow. And that, to me, is sort of a secret. I don't know to a successful career, but at least a challenging and interesting life. Successful. Yes, in my case, but I'm not saying it's guaranteed.
So my story is I loved academia when I was writing my dissertation. I also loved business, I should add. When I was writing my dissertation, I was soon asked to be on a board of a not-for-profit. And I thought, being on this board, wow, this has everything I love. It's got numbers, it's got words, it's got opportunities to speak. I love looking at the bottom line. So I was just really turned on by the possibilities of doing something with a social good also. And when I had studied economics, I did my dissertation on optimal bidding strategies in multi-object auctions like T-bills. It was a very different world than I was studying. So I gravitated to not-for-profit. I didn't really even know this existed, this not-for-profit world. And what we do now, running a foundation that's focused on supporting math and science research, I love that I get to live in the world of ideas, that every day I'm surrounded by people who are passionate and creative and so intellectually stimulating. And at the same time, I'm running a business, I'm looking at the bottom line, I'm thinking about the business model. So it kind of brought together everything that I loved.
That's great. And I've spent my whole career in academia after getting my PhD. And I think part of that is because you do get the opportunities to do very different things. I mean, you're teaching, you're doing research, you serve on committees to make the university better. You can do outside activities like in professional societies.
You founded startups.
Founded
I was gonna
startups, do corporate boards. But at the end of the day, whenever there's been an opportunity for me to leave academia permanently, I've never been at all tempted because I just love being in a university, especially the students. The students inspire me every single day. The students here at Stony Brook, as you all know, inspire me every single day that we have such a big impact on people's lives. Research is so joyful, the joy of discovery, and teaching graduate students and postdocs and helping them through that joy of discovery, and then working with great leaders and academics. I just never felt like I could get the same joy in any other sector beyond academia. So let me go to some of the challenges of leadership. So you've all faced leadership challenges, particularly in disruptive times. So my question is, when you face challenges, how do you address them? And what kept you resilient and motivated through those challenges to persevere and get to the other side?
Okay.
I'm happy to jump in.
Well, I will let Marilyn.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, so I like hiking. I like hiking up tall mountains. Not Mount Everest. I'm not out to break records, and so I just keep going. Just one foot in front of the other. I know where I want to go. I also like boating. Sometimes you're in a storm, but I keep my port in mind. And so I had a therapist who once said to me, "You're a very goal-directed person." And I think that that's accurate, and I just persevere and keep putting one foot in front of the other. And the other thing, though, I think, is I also recognize when I'm surrounded by very talented people. I don't feel alone. I do feel like I have key people around me who complement or are helpful guidance. And I like being part of a team. But so between teamwork and my own vision, I just try to maintain a sense of optimism and just keep making progress. And I think this is the most disruptive time I've experienced. And with the changing in the scientific landscape funding, also we've supported a lot of research in the genetics of autism, and to see empirical evidence questioned and the scientific method questioned, and the lack of support for science has been disruptive, but I can't help but think to navigate to that port, because science, I do think that it will get us answers that will help progress and humanity. So stick to it.
I will talk about a completely different disruptive time. In the mid-90s, when the internet was arriving. And I had taken a role as the vice president for student and academic services, which I referred to as everything in the kitchen sink. So it was the senior vice president role at UBC, University of British Columbia, that had everything that the other vice presidents didn't want. So IT, student services, athletics, the Chan Center for the Performing Arts, just random kinds of libraries, random kinds of stuff. And one of the reasons I took the job, I started in early 1995, was I could see that with the internet coming, everybody, faculty and staff at the university, were going to need to have, well, what we called workstations in those days, but computers, and we were going to have to network the campus. And when I also felt like it was really important to make the students at the university feel like we valued them, because at the time they really felt like they were widgets in a factory. And so those were the two things I ran on. And in my first week on the job, the president who had hired me told me that neither of those were important. And I said, but that's why I took the job. And he said, no, but now that you're actually a vice president, you'll understand those aren't my priorities. And so you don't need to worry about doing those. And I just said, well, I took on this job because I thought they were important, and I'm going to get them done. And it was sort of like over my dead body. So, I also fairly early on realized that he was lying to the board. Oh, and that's the first time I've ever been in a position where the person I was reporting to was dishonest, and really blatantly dishonest. So I'm happy to say, first of all, I'll say this is the most stressful job I've ever had. I sometimes think that what I should have done is just resign on the spot. But I was pretty sure I was doing this job because I thought I might want to be an academic leader. And I felt like if I resigned, that would be the end of my academic leadership career. So in order to get those two things done, given that the president, I mean, it takes a lot of money to actually get workstations for all faculty and staff. At the time, UBC had about 30,000 students, so a reasonably sized university. And it also takes a lot of money to network the campus. And of course, in my vice presidency, I had literally no resources. And one of the things the president was doing was he was spending down every secret fund in the university for his own priorities. So there was only one way to actually make it work, and that was to actually create a collaborative approach to both of those problems. For the networking and workstations, basically what I did was I worked with the provost and department chairs and deans, because they could see that we absolutely needed to make this happen. And I went on a trip to visit Stanford University and a few other universities on the West Coast so we could see what their plans were for networking their campus. And basically, this convinced the provost that we had to do this. And I mean, the extent to which this was successful was that when I went to Princeton, about 7 years later, we had been networked for 5 years across the campus, and Princeton hadn't even started. So we got it done. Wow. The student issue, what I managed to do was bring together all of the, within each of the faculties, those different colleges of the campus, they each had an academic dean, a sub-dean, an associate dean, or an assistant dean who was responsible for student affairs. And so I brought them all together with the folks from student services and so on, and we agreed that we were going to start doing orientation for the first time ever at the university. And it happened, and just within the 3 years or 3.5 years I was in that role, we went from 75% of the students attending the graduation ceremony to 95%. So it worked. So collaboration, building networks.
Great. Let me give a couple of examples of, I guess my personality is, if you say it can't be done, that's like putting the challenge down and let me show you it can be done. So, when I started my career, it's hard to imagine this, but there were no senior women on Wall Street. There were no women partners or in any senior kind of roles. And in fact, there were no pregnant women either, because if you came in and said you were pregnant, that was your last day, you went home. So that was kind of a shocking concept to me. And I looked around and I said, God damn, I'm going to be a managing director. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but that's the goal. So I sort of set it and was just very determined to find opportunities to take those stretch assignments, be really uncomfortable. If I got asked to do something that I didn't know how to do, to take it anyway and be uncomfortable. And it was just a really important goal for me to develop those skills. The second time was we were already at BlackRock, and I was in charge of the customer side, but we didn't have any customers. And when you looked around the industry, most of the people who had my job were kind of 40-ish male. They golfed, they smoked, they drank, they did some other things that I really didn't think was particularly appropriate. And I didn't golf, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. I certainly wasn't going to go to any girly bars. So now I had a real problem. I'm like this odd thing, dramatically younger than them and no contacts. So I figured out that if you could be educational, if you could bring information to people, and if you could leverage their time, and if you could listen to them and find out what they wanted, you could actually become their friend and eventually become their vendor. And in fact, I had quite a few people who said to me that it was so different and it was so refreshing, and that was how we got hired. So it was an accident that I created this solutions-based marketing, but it was because I needed a different way. And I got to say, there were some of my own partners who were a little bit skeptical. But the third one was really the most important. Great financial crisis happened, lots of things went wrong, and we had a front row seat. And we were quite supportive of the Dodd-Frank legislation and many of the pieces of it. Little did we know how that was going to take a very negative turn for our industry and for our customers. And I came back, and I was told that there was no way we were ever going to move that ship. It was, the train had left the station, we were doomed, it was just happening. And I said, hell no. We're going to bring data, we're going to bring facts, we're not going to let a bunch of opinions that are not based on evidence make changes that are bad for investors, bad for our company, bad for our clients. And even our own CFO had gone to our board to ask if we got this particular designation from the regulators, how much capital would we need and how are we going to get all this capital? This is our own CFO. And I said to him, don't spend 1 minute thinking about how we're going to operate if we get this. Think about all the ways we can demonstrate it's not appropriate. And he was a naysayer, and after the fact, he said to me, I don't know how you got that done. I said, well, all the data supported our side. All the opinions supported the other side. And so I just learned that if you were really determined and you really thought about what the issues were and addressed people's concerns in a constructive way, but where there were facts that didn't support the opinions, if you brought the facts, you could win that argument. Not easy, but doable.
Wow. So just to note, we're now looking at a...
Yeah, the time went away, but I've got...
Okay. Now looking at,
We're looking
a
at the
cityscape as
Manhattan
opposed
skyline.
to... so I think now I have all the time in the world to finish. That's right. So I want to strongly second where Marilyn started, just sheer persistence. I've been through a number of crises, and the basic resilience of you just get up and you do what you need to do is critical. And the collaborative dimension, I learned the hard way, but definitely recognizing that A team of people is better, particularly a team of people who will tell you what you may not want to hear and who bring lots of different experiences to the table. I'd add a thick skin. If you want to be a leader, you're not going to be liked all the time. You might not even be liked most of the time, but one hopes really good leaders are able to do things that people don't like, but still respect them for doing. That's an art. But you know, if you can't handle bad things being said about you, particularly in public, if it's a big crisis, then you're not cut out to be a leader. And even more generally, it might not be public, but you just got to do things that not everybody's going to like. And the other is just the courage sometimes it's the courage to stick to your position, and sometimes it's the courage to climb down from your position and to say, I was wrong. When I went through a major crisis in public in 2017, one of my board members said to me, look, run toward the criticism. And he said, think about it as having an argument with your spouse or your partner, where it's clear to you that you are 98% right, and maybe your spouse or partner's 2% right, maybe, but focus on that 2%. You might say, it is possible that I didn't tell you or I didn't do whatever. Focus, run toward the criticism. And I called every board member I had and said, okay, you need to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Nicely, I hope, but I really need to hear it. And I was doing a lot of things wrong, and if I hadn't found that out, I wouldn't have been able to fix them. So the things I would add, definitely the just one foot after another. I love the hiking and the boat. I think they're both right. And collaborative leadership, real working with a great team. But I would add a thick skin and the courage to admit, sometimes it's to stick to your position and not be liked, and sometimes it's to recognize you were the one who was wrong.
I want to talk about mentoring. We know that Marilyn founded this amazing mentoring organization here at Stony Brook, and I think all of us have been impacted by mentors and supporters at different points in their careers. So my question is, what role did mentors and supporters play in your own careers, and how does that impact your approach to mentoring? And I'll start with Marilyn.
Oh, okay. So I didn't have a mentor per se, but I was given the opportunities or asked to work with people who I learned so much from just watching them. I got opportunities to be chair of the board of a school or chair of the board of a research organization. And starting from when I was in my 30s and always watching how did somebody succeed. I think that just being tapped on the shoulder and asked to do something and work with someone gave me, so that's why I'm saying it wasn't mentoring per se, but that I was selected to work with somebody. I felt valued, and it gave me a lot of opportunity. And I think those kind of things made such a difference in my life, starting, with my 5th grade teacher just must have appointed me to be chair of the civics club, and we learned Robert's Rules of Order.
In 5th grade?
Just being told, okay, this is what you're doing, those were all helpful to me. And as I said earlier, my own path has been so undirected, more like a river flowing and just seizing opportunities that came. But because of that, I've really wanted to help other people find their way. I felt so many people were helpful to me that I don't think that I've ever done anything as rewarding as it's been mentoring the young women in the Women's Leadership Council, to just see people, many of whom come from similar backgrounds to my own, and to be able to give them guidance, but also open doors of opportunity for them that might not be readily available, and to watch people thrive despite, I'm sure we all had setbacks and disappointments, and life is not, one's happiness is not a monotonically increasing function of time.
That is true. I love that.
So to watch others thrive has truly been the most satisfying part of all the work that I've ever done. So
That's beautiful. Who else would like to speak about mentoring, Barbara?
So we didn't have the language mentors and sponsors when we started our careers. And so people did things that today you would call mentoring. I had one boss who put me in some of the most ridiculous situations and just pushed me to try things that I wasn't comfortable trying. But he also, on the other side of it, invited me to go to meetings with him where I could observe and I could learn and I could, develop those skills. So it wasn't just throw me in the swimming pool and wonder if I knew how to swim. And those things I really took away that, as I became a manager, and in some cases the mentees were employees that worked for me. Sometimes it was people in other groups. I found that giving people the big picture, so that they weren't just getting some little slice of a project, spending that extra time explaining what we were doing, why we were doing it, giving them the opportunity to ask questions and to really be inquisitive. And I tell people, young people especially, the world is changing so fast. You have to commit to being a lifelong learner. What you learned in college, you may never use again. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But you need to keep learning, reading, listen to podcasts, whatever way you want to get your information. You have to keep growing and you have to keep embracing new technologies, new ideas, and the whole idea of embracing change and turning that change into opportunity. So, I encourage people to consider networking part of their day job, not an extra thing, that it helps open the aperture, let them see things more broadly, gives them opportunities maybe to move laterally or zigzag a little bit because they might like parts of what they're doing, but not all of it. They can build on that. And just give them that sense that it's not always this very planned step by step by step, as you've heard from all of us. I mean, we've ended up doing things we didn't expect to do, and that they shouldn't close their minds or their eyes to other opportunities as they grow in their career.
I was very lucky. There was a famous mathematician called Ron Graham who, among other things, could juggle 7 balls. He noticed me pretty early in my career, I think just before I finished my PhD, and he would suggest me for all kinds of things. I knew him, he was a friend, but I think it was more like sponsorship than mentorship, because he would just, I would become the editor of a new journal out of the blue, or I would give a keynote at a math society meeting or whatever. I think in terms of, and that made a huge difference in my life because I just had lots and lots of opportunities. My approach to mentoring others has been wherever I am and whoever it is, I figure I've made every mistake there is to make in the world. And that makes me a really good person to give advice. And so I mentor people all over the world, all the time. And it's I mean, it's just something that I have to say, if I'm feeling really bad about myself, which, you know, I often talk about the imposter syndrome and how I get up every day feeling I'm a total failure. The best way to feel better is to mentor someone. Just be helpful.
I love that. I had two wonderful mentors as a law student and then law professor and similarly in the world of political science. Both were men who had wives who were pioneers, who were leaders, and who had not had enough mentoring. So these were both men who pushed women in political science and in law, and were they did help me see that bigger picture. They just told me what I needed to do often, and they put me forward. So mentoring is not just giving advice, it is also a kind of blend of what we might also call sponsorship. But mentoring is really, in the end, it's teaching. Your mentor was the teacher of, I think I've got this right, Telemachus, who was Odysseus' son in the Odyssey. And it's the idea of being someone who instructs, who guides a younger person. And I agree with you. I on my social media handle, I have mother mentor following each other. I love mentoring. To me is one of those times where you think no matter what you do in the world, you have the ability to enable others younger than you are to flourish. And so it's a tremendously rewarding thing to do. The last thing I'd say, though, is I think I made a mistake in my life thinking that once I'd gotten to a certain age, I no longer needed a mentor, that I'm a mentor, but I don't need one. And that's not true. When I moved to Washington, I should have gotten a Washington mentor because it was totally different than the world of academia, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I think I just decided in my 50s, no, I'm now a mentor, not a mentee. I think you can be both pretty much lifelong.
Yeah, and I've found, I love what you say about the beauty of mentoring others and how rewarding it is. And I always encourage young people to seek out mentors because you have no idea how much joy it gives the mentor to see you flourish and to see you thrive in your careers. And also, I think this imposter syndrome that came up, when somebody believes in you, you don't feel like an imposter anymore. If you think, oh, I can't possibly do president's job. I can't possibly be a dean of engineering. I can't possibly start a company or go to Wall Street or start a nonprofit. And somebody says, yes, you can do it. I believe in you and this is why, and I'm going to help you and find other people to help you. It just unlocks something in you that allows you to succeed, which is not possible without mentorship. So unfortunately, we're at time. I'm going to ask our amazing panelists for closing thoughts, including what advice you might have for members of our audience who aspire to leadership roles. And then I'll wrap up with Karen Keogh's comments and some closing remarks. Anyone can start.
I'll start. We'll go down this way. So I'll leave you with my friend Nan Earl Cohan, who was the president of Wellesley and then the president of Duke, and wrote a wonderful book called Thinking About Leadership. And in that, she defines leadership as a leader is someone who clarifies or determines the energies of a group and mobilizes the energies, clarify or determine the goals of a group and mobilizes the energies of group members to accomplish those goals. So think about it. You're somebody, you'd have a group of people, you help them figure out what their goals are, and then you mobilize the energies of the members of that group to achieve those goals. What I love about that is the beginning of her book, she uses the example of a homeless person in an encampment in Rhode Island where they had to deal with the city, and this was the guy who was the leader for those purposes. You can be a leader one day and a follower the next. You can be a leader in many different contexts. And this is a very collaborative view of leadership. It's not a person on the white horse in front of everyone else. But it means in your own lives, you can be a leader. You can then also turn to follow someone else. And it doesn't require a title or conferred authority. That's great when you have it, but that is not necessary. And in the world you're in, there are so many opportunities for that kind of leadership. So I'd leave you with that thought. And also the knowledge that you have a spectacular leader in your new president.
So the piece of advice I'm going to give you, which is, I think one of the things that you've heard from all of us is, we all do what we do because we want to make the world a better place. We're trying to solve problems. And we're motivated by the things that we come across in our life one way or another that we want to change. So I want to give you my advice on how to change the world.
In 1 minute or less, right?
Yes. The easiest way to actually have impact is to connect networks that aren't currently connected.
Absolutely.
And it's because, first of all, there's this thing called the outsider voice. Like, if I talk to my network about what I think is the right thing to do, but if I grab Marilyn or Barbara or Anne-Marie or Andrea to come and talk to my network, and they say exactly the same thing, people go, yes! So, connect networks and be the outsider in somebody else's network, and invite others into your network to be the outsider with you.
That was interesting. So I would say a few key things. One, we haven't talked at all about integrity, but one thing I learned from my father was integrity was number 1, 2, and 3, and I taught my kids it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Much easier to ruin your reputation and do it very quickly than to build a stellar reputation. And you always want to be thinking about doing the right thing because that reputation will stick with you. The second, I talked about earlier, the idea of listening and learning. You can't listen enough. The person who goes into a sales meeting and starts spouting off about their product or service or whatever, the customer turns off, couldn't care less. And that's true of every interaction you have. Think about people you know just socially. You go in and all they want to do is talk about themselves. Do you really enjoy that interaction? So just the same kind of thing in business. You want to learn about people, you want to learn about what they're thinking, you want to learn what things they need. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier, the idea of embracing change and turning change into opportunity. I could give you so many examples of where a law changed, an accounting thing changed, a company changed, we bought a company, whatever the change was, you can take that change and you can think about it as pine for the past and then you're doomed. Or you can think about it and say, how can I seize this opportunity to do something that I might not have been able to do before? And those people are wildly successful and become the leaders.
When you talked about integrity, you reminded me of this New Yorker cartoon of a bunch of men in a boardroom, and they're sitting at the table, and the chair says, now we all agree honesty is the best policy, but what's the second best? But I agree, integrity, integrity, integrity. I was thinking about when I had the opportunity, after many years of being married to my husband, to working with him. He had run Renaissance and I'd done my own things. I'd started the foundation and was, in the office working on that. And when Jim retired, he wanted to get more involved with the foundation. So, of course, we were working together. So I remember one day he said to me while I was writing something, he said, I see what you do. You prepare. And I said to him, Well, I can't just count on natural genius when I walk in. So, but I also watched what he did. And when he showed up 100%. He was there to contribute and to add whatever he could to the group. So I learned a lot from him. He did take a lot of naps and lectures, but still, he would wake up and he would be there and he would make things, give everything he could to a project or an endeavor's success. And I'm reminded when I heard President Obama speaking to a graduating class that my goddaughter was in, he said, if you get invited to have a seat at the table, take that seat at the table. And so thinking about my own husband's behavior and Barack Obama's advice, I just want to suggest that if you get an opportunity and invited to have a voice or share a message or be a part, take that opportunity and give it all you've got.
That's a wonderful way to end this incredible panel on leadership. And when I think about all of you who took on leadership positions to make a positive difference, that's always the best reason to be a leader. Not for title or for power, it's to the fact that you can really change things for the better. And you can do that at any age. Talked about it in 5th grade, you can do that at any level. I've had the incredible good fortune to work with our student government leaders here at Stony Brook, and they've been among the most impressive leaders I've worked with, including corporate boards, and way more professional in some cases than people I've worked with in startups and boards and academia. You can all make a big positive difference by leading, and you don't need a title to do it. You don't need someone to tap you on the shoulder. You can tap yourself on the shoulder and say, you can lead. But of course, it helps when you have these opportunities to take advantage of them. So I'm going to close out by reading the beautiful words of Karen Keogh, who, again, was sorry that she couldn't be here today. So here's a note from her. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a few words. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you for today. I especially regret missing the chance to join this incredible panel and to be on campus to celebrate the inauguration of President Goldsmith, that's me, who I've truly enjoyed getting to know over the past few months. Stony Brook is very fortunate to have her. As a proud Stony Brook alum, I've always felt grounded in the idea of public service. Early in my career, I said yes to opportunities that stretched me, often before I realized I should be intimidated and focused on doing meaningful work with people who became like family. I described my career as nonlinear, which we've also heard from people here, which kept things interesting and challenging. I've worked in local, state, and federal government for the largest New York City municipal union, taught as an adjunct, spent 11 years on Wall Street, and a fair amount of time in politics. I even had a small business for a few years. Like I said, nonlinear. I've come to believe that leadership is about building strong teams, communicating clearly, and staying steady through change. I was fortunate to have incredible mentors, and I try to pay that forward. That sentiment is what inspired my involvement with Stony Brook's Women Leadership Council, founded by Marilyn Simons. My advice to you is simple. Stay curious, be a hand raiser, take the stretch opportunities, and lead with your head and your heart. I hope our paths cross again soon. Let's give.
That's wonderful.
So it's been an amazing panel, inspiring and powerful discussion. I love the notion of bringing networks together. That's what I did in inviting people from my past and present and future. from different sectors who've had such incredible, broad and diverse leadership journeys to come to speak to you today. As a new university president at an exciting and challenging time to be in a leadership position, I found this discussion motivating. I learned a lot from you, and it goes back to the fact that you always need mentors at every age and in every position. Thank you all for teaching me and all your mentorship and support throughout my professional journey, including in this role. One of our educational goals here at Stony Brook is to create the future leaders of the country. That's one of our missions as a great public university, the #1 public university in New York. These transformative leaders, including 2 Stony Brook alum, Marilyn and Karen Keogh, gives me incredible optimism that we can do that we are creating the great leaders of the future. I hope that we can continue to tap the wisdom of all of you as we take Stony Brook to new levels of excellence and impact across all of our dimensions. So thank you again for participating in this panel. I want to thank you for joining us today, for being part of my inauguration. And our next discussion right here at the will be at the Wong Theater, where we'll hear from Stony Brook community members about their experiences as entrepreneurs and innovators. That's a little bit later today. But for now, please join me in thanking our incredible panelists. Thanks to you all.